The room buzzed with the sound of laughter and music, the kind of warmth that only comes from a night shared with loved ones. The soft glow of string lights bathed the dance floor, creating an atmosphere of light-hearted celebration. Families moved in rhythm, their hearts and feet in sync as the melody of "What a Wonderful World" swirled through the air, filling every corner of the hall with joy. Amid the festive atmosphere, a small, determined voice broke through the laughter. "Will you be my dance partner?" The crowd fell silent. Everyone turned to see a young girl, no more than 6, standing alone with a simple, unwavering gaze directed at the man across the room. His sharp features and confident posture made him seem out of place in the circle of children and families. His name was Julian Cade, the billionaire business mogul who had been a silent observer of the festivities, lost in thought. But as the little girl's gaze held his, something unexpected stirred inside him. Julian's world had always been one of control, ambition, and success. He was used to power. His name alone commanded attention. Yet here, in this moment, it was just him and her, a stranger asking for something pure, something simple, to dance. His heart skipped a beat. For the first time in years, Julian felt a flicker of vulnerability. The weight of his title and his wealth didn't matter here. What mattered was the sincerity in the child's voice. She didn't know who he was or what he had achieved. She simply saw a man standing alone. And that moment, more than anything in his life, felt like a door opening, one he wasn't sure he was ready to walk through. Do you believe in the power of connection? Sometimes it's the simplest gestures, like sharing a dance with a stranger, that have the most profound impact on our lives. Let us know your thoughts on the power of love and trust. Can two people, brought together by a simple moment, change each other's lives forever? The moment lingered in the air like a breath held too long. The music continued to swirl around them, but it felt distant, faint, as if the world had temporarily paused to witness something real, something unplanned. Julian stood still, the crowd's murmurs fading into the background as his gaze locked with the little girl's. Her innocent confidence was a stark contrast to his own controlled, calculated world. She waited, her small hand extended toward him, her wide brown eyes filled with an unspoken trust that caught him off guard. Julian had seen trust before, in his business dealings, in the faces of people who needed something from him. But this trust was different. This trust wasn't rooted in expectations, in what he could offer. It was pure, untarnished, and offered freely, as simple and unpretentious as the smile on her face. For a long moment, Julian didn't move. The weight of the room's attention was palpable, but there was something more pulling him. The hesitation inside him was rooted in fear, in the need to protect the fragile walls he'd spent years constructing. But the gentle pull of the child's hand, so small yet so determined, was enough to break through his hesitation. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Julian let go of the need for control. He bent down slightly, meeting her gaze at eye level, and with a soft smile that surprised even him, he took her hand. "Well," Julian said, his voice quieter than usual, as though speaking too loudly would break the spell between them, "I suppose I can't refuse such a kind invitation." Layla's face lit up with joy, her gap-toothed grin spreading wide as she tugged him toward the center of the dance floor. She was unburdened by anything but the joy of the moment, her small form pulling him along with a strength that belied her size. Julian followed, his heart pounding not from nervousness, but from something else, a curiosity, a wonder how easily she had drawn him into her world. The crowd parted, some in awe, others in amusement, and the DJ, sensing the significance of the moment, switched the track to something softer, something timeless. The music was gentle, warm, wrapping around him like a familiar embrace. What a wonderful world filled the room, its familiar notes now taking on a new meaning, a new significance in the context of this unlikely pairing. As Julian took her hand, He felt the softness of her small palm, the warmth of her touch sending a surprising wave of emotion through him. He hadn't touched anyone like this in years. Not since Camille. Not since before he'd become trapped by his own success. It was a fleeting touch, but it stirred something deep within him. Something that had been buried for far too long. Layla tugged him lightly, guiding him with an ease that betrayed the carefree nature of her age. She stepped to the left, then to the right, her movements unpracticed but full of joy. Julian, awkward at first, mirrored her movements, their feet stepping in time with the music. They collided briefly, their bodies touching in the simplest of ways. It should have felt strange, maybe even uncomfortable, but instead it felt natural, like a connection Julian hadn't known he was searching for. Her laughter broke the silence that followed their collision, a sound so pure and untainted that Julian couldn't help but chuckle as well. The tension he'd carried for so long seemed to melt away in her presence. For the first time in years, he felt something he had forgotten, a sense of lightness. "You're really bad at this," Layla teased, her voice filled with playful mischief. Her words didn't sting. Instead, they were a gentle invitation, a reminder that there was joy in the moment, even in its imperfections. "I've been told," Julian responded. Try to match her rhythm, a smile tugging at his lips. It felt so strange, so foreign to be in this vulnerable place, to be seen, not for his power or his wealth, but simply as a man who was trying to find his way. He added, almost to himself, "You, on the other hand, are natural." Layla giggled again, her innocent charm radiating in every movement. "I'm just pretending," she said with a wink. Julian paused for a moment, taken aback by the simplicity of her words. "I'll pretend, too," he said, more to himself than to her. For the first time in a long while, as they stumbled and spun together, the world outside their little dance bubble seemed to disappear. The tension in the room, the expectations, the weight of his identity, it all faded. All that remained was the sound of their laughter and the gentle rhythm of their bodies moving together, a dance born from the purest of intentions. And for a moment, Julian Cade was not a billionaire businessman, not the mogul people admired or feared. He was simply a man dancing with a little girl who had asked him to join her. The dance had become something more than just steps to Julian. It wasn't about getting the movements right or following the music perfectly. It was about feeling something deeper than the power he had spent years amassing. Layla's presence was like a balm to his soul, soothing the loneliness that had quietly consumed him. As the music played on, Julian found himself growing more comfortable in her presence. The awkwardness that had initially gripped him faded, replaced by an undeniable warmth that seemed to radiate between them. Every time she looked up at him with those bright, innocent eyes, Julian felt the walls he'd built around himself begin to crumble. The world outside their little bubble seemed to blur, the people, the noise, all of it fading into the background as he focused entirely on her. Layla continued to lead, her small body moving with a natural grace. She didn't need to be told what to do. She simply flowed, unburdened by the complexities of life. The freedom with which she danced was intoxicating, and Julian couldn't help but smile, his gaze lingering on her. She was a beacon of light in a world he had long forgotten how to enjoy. The simplicity of her joy, her unrestrained laughter, was a stark contrast to the rigid control he had always maintained. And then, as though sensing the shift in the energy between them, Layla stepped closer, her small hand resting gently against his chest. Julian could feel the soft warmth of her fingers through the fabric of his shirt, and his heart skipped a beat. She didn't speak. There was no need for words. Her touch said everything. Julian hesitated for a brief moment, unsure whether to pull away or to close the distance between them. But the closeness, the intimacy, felt too real to ignore. He allowed himself to pull her closer, his hand settling on her waist, guiding her into a slow spin. She followed, her body moving fluidly in his arms, their dance becoming more than just a shared moment of joy. It became an exchange, one of vulnerability, of trust, of connection. His fingers traced the curve of her back, his breath catching in his throat as the contact sparked something deep inside him. He had forgotten what it felt like to hold someone, to feel the warmth of another human being so close. It wasn't just about the physical closeness. It was the emotional intimacy that made his heart race. For the first time in years, Julian felt alive. The weight of his wealth, his title, all seemed irrelevant. Layla tilted her head back slightly, her eyes meeting his, a silent invitation in the air. And just like that, without thinking, Julian leaned down, his lips brushing against her forehead. The touch was soft, tender, and surprisingly electrifying. He had kissed women before, of course. But this was different. This wasn't about passion. It wasn't about desire. It was something more intimate, something that made his heart ache in the best way possible. Layla closed her eyes, her small smile softening as she pressed her cheek to his chest. "I knew you could do it," she whispered, the sound of her voice sending a shiver through him. "You're good at this." Julian smiled, his fingers running through her hair. "I guess I'm still learning," he said quietly, "but I'm getting better." Her laughter, light and carefree, echoed in his chest, and in that moment, Julian realized how much he had missed out on. The years of success, the empire he had built, it all felt hollow in comparison to what he was experiencing right now. He had spent so much time focused on things that didn't matter, the money, the status, the power. And yet, here in the warmth of her presence, he had everything he could ever want. The dance slowed, and Julian pulled back just enough to meet her gaze again. He wasn't sure where the moment was going, but he didn't want it to end. Not yet. His heart was still racing, his chest still tight with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in so long. Layla's eyes softened as she looked up at him. There was a quiet understanding between them, a bond that transcended words. Julian didn't know what it was, but he knew it was real. The music played on, and the crowd around them seemed to fade, leaving just the two of them in this intimate dance. The soft glow of the lights reflected off their bodies as they moved together, their connection growing deeper with every step, every brush of skin. Have you ever experienced a moment that made you feel like time had stopped? A simple, unexpected connection that changed the course of your day or even your life. Let us know your thoughts on the power of love, connection, and trust. How do you think a single moment can transform someone's world? As the music faded into a soft hum, Julian held Layla close, their bodies still swaying in sync with the slow rhythm. The warmth of her breath against his chest made his heart beat faster, and for a moment, it was as if the world outside had ceased to exist. It was just them, the man who had spent his life in control, and the young girl who had unknowingly unlocked something deep within him. He hadn't known it was possible to feel so alive, so vulnerable, in the arms of someone so innocent. Layla's hand rested on his chest, her fingers tracing the faint outline of his heartbeat. The gesture was simple, yet felt intimate, like she was learning the rhythm of his emotions, feeling the thrum of something much deeper than what he had ever let anyone see. Julian closed his eyes, inhaling deeply as her presence washed over him, filling him with a warmth he couldn't explain. He had forgotten what it was like to be seen for more than his wealth, to be understood for the things that lay beneath his carefully constructed exterior. Her voice, soft and unassuming, broke through his thoughts. "I think you're ready for more than just this dance." Her words were so matter-of-fact, so genuine, that they startled him. He opened his eyes to find her staring up at him, her gaze filled with quiet wisdom, as though she had known all along that something more was waiting for them. "I've never danced like this before." Julian said softly, his voice rough and the emotion stirring inside him. "I didn't know I needed it until now." Layla smiled, her lips curving into the kind of grin that seemed to hold all the secrets of the world. "Sometimes, the things we need are the last ones we expect." For a long moment, they stood there, their eyes locked, the unspoken bond between them growing stronger with each passing second. Julian couldn't remember the last time he felt this way, truly seen, truly understood. It wasn't just about the physical pull he felt toward her, though that was undeniable. It was the way her presence made him feel like he was allowed to be human again, to shed the layers of armor he had spent so long building. Layla reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw with the softest of touches. The simplicity of the gesture caught him off guard, sending a wave of tenderness through him. Her touch was gentle, but there was a quiet strength behind it, a strength that made him realize he was no longer in control of this moment. And for the first time, he didn't want to be. His hands, guided by an instinct he couldn't suppress, cupped her face gently, tilted her chin upward so their gazes could meet fully. There was something undeniably magnetic about her, something that pulled him closer, making every nerve in his body hum with need. It wasn't just physical. It was an emotional hunger, a longing for something real, something pure. Layla didn't pull away. Instead, she closed the distance between them, her lips brushing against his in a soft, tentative kiss. It was light at first, a hesitant exploration of the unspoken chemistry that had been building between them. But as Julian responded, the kiss deepened, the tenderness giving way to something more urgent, more passionate. The world outside ceased to exist as they became completely absorbed in one another. Julian's hands roamed her back, pulling her closer as he deepened the kiss. The heat of her body against his was intoxicating, her warmth radiating through him, igniting a fire he hadn't known he still possessed. His fingers trailed down her spine, feeling the delicate curve of her body, the smoothness of her skin beneath the fabric of her dress. He could feel the slight tremor in her movements, her breath quickening, matching his own. Layla responded with equal fervor, her hands threading through his hair as she kissed him harder, her body pressing into his. Every movement, every touch, felt like a revelation, each one pulling them deeper into a shared world where nothing else mattered but the connection between them. There were no barriers, no walls, just the undeniable pull of two souls meeting, colliding and intertwining. As their kiss broke for a breath, Julian's heart raced, the intensity of the moment leaving him breathless. He looked into her eyes, finding a fire there that mirrored his own. There was no turning back now. This was something more than just a fleeting attraction. This was a connection, a deep, primal bond that neither of them could ignore. Layla's breath was shaky, her chest rising and falling as she stared up at him, her lips still swollen from their kiss. "I never thought someone like you could feel this way," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Julian chuckled softly, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "And I never thought someone like you could make me feel so alive." She smiled, her hands resting on his chest. "Sometimes we find the most unexpected things when we stop pretending." Julian felt a quiet moment of clarity. Layla had opened something inside him, something he had buried long ago. She had shown him that even in a world driven by power and control, there was still room for connection, for intimacy, for love. He leaned down, his lips brushing against her ear. "Let's not stop pretending," he murmured. "Not tonight." With that, their kiss deepened again, this time with the intensity of everything they had shared. The world around them faded into nothingness, leaving only the two of them, lost in the warmth of their connection. Have you ever experienced a connection so deep that it changed the way you saw the world? Sometimes it's the unexpected moments, the chance encounters, that have the power to transform us. Let us know your thoughts on the power of love and trust. Do you believe a single moment can reshape a life? As the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the dance between them continued. Julian had never felt time move so slowly, and yet, in the presence of Layla, he wished for it to never end. Her touch, soft and lingering, had unlocked something in him he hadn't known existed. Every kiss, every moment spent in her arms, was a revelation, an exploration of not just the physical, but the emotional and spiritual depths that had long been dormant in him. His hands moved over her body with reverence, as if he were memorizing every inch of her. She was delicate, but there was a quiet strength in her, a presence that demanded more than just attention. It demanded connection, and Julian found himself giving more than he had ever given to anyone before. He was no longer the distant billionaire, removed from the world by his wealth and status. In her arms, he was simply a man who had forgotten what it was like to be desired, to be wanted, to be truly seen. Layla's hand slid up his chest, the warmth of her touch sending waves of heat through him. She kissed him again, this time slower, as if savoring the moment, and Julian responded, his lips pressing against hers with a hunger he hadn't known he possessed. The kiss was deep, hungry, their bodies moving in perfect sync as the world around them faded into the background. Her small hands found their way to the waistband of his pants, the touch of her fingers light but insistent. Julian's breath caught his throat as she slowly undid the button, the movement simple yet charged with an intensity he hadn't expected. His heart pounded in his chest, and for a moment he hesitated. Was this what he wanted? Was this what they both needed? But before he could second-guess himself, Layla's eyes met his, and the trust in her gaze reassured him. She wanted this. She wanted him. He pulled her closer, his hands running down her back, pushing the fabric of her dress aside. The sensation of her bare skin against it sent a jolt of electricity through him. He hadn't felt anything like this in so long. The connection, the intimacy, the sheer need that pulsed between them. Their kiss deepened again, and as Julian's hands moved lower, he felt the soft curve of her body, the heat of her skin beneath his fingers. He wasn't just touching her, he was discovering her, learning every inch of her in a way that felt more meaningful than any physical act he had ever known. Layla's hands were on him again, pulling at his clothes, eager to feel more of him. Her urgency mirrored his own, but there was no rush, no need to hurry. The pace was slow, deliberate. Each touch, each kiss a promise of something more, something deeper. The connection they shared wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, an undeniable bond that pulled them together in a way that felt inevitable. When their bodies finally came together, it was with the intensity of everything they had shared. The dance, the kisses, the longing that had built between them since that first moment. There was no hesitancy now, no uncertainty. Just the overwhelming need to feel each other fully, completely. The world around them disappeared as their bodies moved in harmony, the rhythm of their connection driving them forward, pushing them into the depths of something they had both been longing for. Every touch, every movement was an exploration, a discovery of each other in ways that words could never express. As the waves of pleasure washed over them, Julian's heart raced, and for the first time in years, he felt completely vulnerable, completely exposed. But he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of being seen for who he was. Not in this moment. Not with her. Layla had broken down the walls he had spent so long building. And now, he was free to feel, free to experience the kind of love and intimacy he had only dreamed of. The room seemed to disappear. The only thing that mattered now was the feeling of her body against his, the sound of her breath, the soft whispers of her name as it fell from his lips. When the moment finally came to an end, they lay together, their bodies intertwined, hearts still racing. Julian held her close, his fingers tracing her skin, committing every sensation to memory. There were no words, just a quiet rhythm of their breathing as they both recovered from the intensity of their connection. Layla snuggled against him, her head resting on his chest as they lay there in the soft silence of the room. Julian's heart still beat rapidly, but it wasn't from desire anymore. It was from the sheer intensity of what they had shared, the emotional intimacy, the raw vulnerability, and the connection that had blossomed between them in the span of just a few hours. He had found something he hadn't even known he was looking for, something that couldn't be bought or controlled. Love, trust, connection. For the first time in years, Julian Cade felt truly alive, and he knew that whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same again. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed you? A moment where everything you thought you knew about love, connection, and vulnerability was turned on its head? Share your thoughts on how one meaningful encounter can reshape everything. What's the most unexpected connection you've had in your life?